Welcome back to Motherboard. I hope you're having a fantastic day. So today, right now, the hot tracks have cooled down and we can talk about the things that are in the patch. This one was quite the mess when it first came out of the oven, and the namesake of the patch, the hot tracks, weren't actually there at the beginning. Initially they were, but then they were removed because they were buggy and delayed till, well, now they're here. The things like that are just the tip of the iceberg. I believe it was the F4B as well as the E were having a little too much fun, and whenever they crashed the game. Not only for the pilot, but everyone else who was in the match. There was a good few other things that were buggy, as well as plenty of random crashes. Honestly, all this isn't actually that amazing or surprising because we didn't have a second dev server, because guys had decided to rush the patch and just skip second dev server. Oftentimes second dev servers are kind of boring, but there was literally vehicles not there in the first dev server that are now here in the patch. Kind of fun to see some surprises, but having more hands-on testing would have been nice. Probably would have caught the game-breaking bug in which crashed the game for everyone in the match when a certain plane flew into the ground. But I'm not here to rib on them about their unfortunate programming. There's plenty of other people doing that already. We're here to talk about the things that have changed since Dev Server 1 to Dev Server 2, also known as the live server. So going down the list of nations, starting off with the United States, we have the A7D, which now sits at a 9.3 battle rating, and the cannons have been buffed. Now penetrate 102 millimeters at 10 meters. I told you guys those prior penetration stats seem kind of low. Overall, I very much like the plane, though I feel its efficiency is not as great as if it were to have something like bullpups. However, it does have some advantages over the A4E. For one, when it crashes to ground, it doesn't crash the game. Keep in mind when I'm talking about anything, it's only in ground RB. I haven't bothered to take the thing into air RB because Burton tanks is just so much fun. But anyways, the AIM-9Js are very useful for clearing the air of any obstacles, mostly G91s. However, when up against Spags, this is why I think bullpups and other anti-ground missiles are more effective, is the time on target is typically much longer than a bullpup, which you point and you click and you make corrections while you fly away in the other direction. The Spag has to track you. While with the guns, even though you can be on target for a very short period of time, it's longer than if it were a bullpup, leaving you to be very vulnerable for a few seconds if that Spag catches up with you. Now add like 3 Spags and you're definitely gonna die soon. I have also not bothered to try to use bombs on the thing because the guns are just so much fun. Now the bombs would definitely be very useful. You have a ballistic computer and you have some very massive bombs and a good number of them, but the guns are just so much more fun. Now the final point about this thing I find very hilarious is they have introduced a new thing where armor piercing belts increase the spawn cost of a vehicle. So you just take away the armor piercing belts with the ground targets if they're labeled that and you get a cheaper spawn cost. However, for this thing, the stock belts of the 30mm gun pods have the same ammunition, so the same penetration, but the only difference between that and the ground targets is the ground targets has one more AP bullet per 4 shots. So it's not much of a trade-off and it's not worth the 100 spawn points. The other thing I could talk about for the United States, though this is going to cover multiple nations, is the F-84F. I don't actually have it, so I haven't taken it out, but from what I've heard is my description of it, a fat saber, is quite apt. Though perhaps a better one would be a faster F-84. However, apparently it turns slower and doesn't have as much ordnance. I've actually had 2 different people say perhaps it should be 8.3 instead of 8.7. Once again, I don't have it, so I can't put my own input, and I don't play jets much at all. So I'm real curious to hear what your opinions are on that. Be sure to comment down below. Besides that, for the US, the only other news I have is the F-111 has been denied. For Germany, I haven't yet actually been able to look at the new vehicles, and I haven't heard much about them, so they all seem to be working as intended, which is actually a surprise for how many things in this patch that weren't working as intended. What I can say though is they did have some other interesting changes. For example, the F-104G now has flares. It's a tier 1 modification. But also, and this goes for the Italian one as well, and this is actually after the patch, the G91R4 now has the ability to take out 4 AGMs in exchange for 2 of its machine guns. Also, it happens to be that there's a winter sale going on, and now all GE vehicles that weren't from this patch or the prior patch are on sale. And would you look at that? That includes the German G91R4. What a happy coincidence. You know, I gotta say, I bet that G91R4 is gonna be very useful when trying to grind out the winter event. Just a happy coincidence that it got buffed and is on sale. If this kind of BS is what it costs to get some proper running servers, then okay, go do that. I just get my servers working, man. I know they're not gonna get the servers working. Just let me dream a little. For Russia, we also got a little surprise, the ZSU-37-2, a radar-guided Spag right after the Shilka with a very fast fire rate of 2 37mm cannons. For what I hear, it does not have proximity fuse shells, but they shells do somehow magically explode near the plane. I assume babushka magic. And honestly, I feel like it should have been added sooner. Like, it's a well-known Russian tank. It seems to work better than the Shilka. The Shilka had a number of setbacks, and this one improves on it. One being being that the small size of the belt, so they did have a pretty fast fire rate, but also the radar was kind of limiting. This one isn't exactly a whole lot better, but I actually haven't taken it out in combat yet. You gotta research the damn thing and it takes forever. So maybe I shouldn't speak too much. It's also a bit annoying that now I have to research this bag if I want to get the Tunguska. Maybe that was the reason why it was added, actually, to stop people like me from getting the Tunguska. Now you gotta grind it another tank. The other thing I want to talk about with Russia was actually, with my last video, I had made a bit of a mess up, and unfortunately it seems it wasn't cleared easily. The event vehicle that is coming up, the MiG-21 PFP, is only going to be carrying R3s, not R60s or R13s, only R3Ss, and only 2 of them. Sorry for the confusion there, but it seems this vehicle is going to be primarily used for ground attacking. As I was informed how bad R3Ss are, they're essentially AIM-9Bs, which suck. However, in a recent patch, MiG-21 performance was increased a small bit, though I'm not sure exactly if it's going to make MiG-21's rule top tier. A possibility, though, is if this thing's performance is so bad, perhaps we could see a 9.7 vehicle, which would be great because my highest Russian tanks are 9.7. Yeah, I know I should start researching more Russian tanks. I'm busy with everything else. Currently, the Panhard is hilarious, but that'll be subject for another video, and you're not going to want to miss that one. For the United Kingdom, they got the Canadian ADATs, which is like the ADATs, but on an M113 chassis, and has no gun, probably because it's Canadian. Haven't actually heard much else about it. No complaints of it being broken or buggy. In fact, I actually haven't seen one in combat. Not a whole lot of aircraft at top tier because of the missile bags, and not a whole lot of people play UK at top tier. Japan also had a pleasant surprise. Well, very pleasant if you love grinding Japanese ships. Not pleasant if you are currently trying to grind out naval tasks and don't have a battleship, or even do have a battleship. The IJN Hyuga, which is actually a super dreadnought built in the 20s, but actually saw service all the way into the Second World War. In fact, in the Second World War, it was retrofitted to be a hybrid carrier battleship, similar to what was proposed to happen to Iowa. But unlike Iowa, it actually was carried out, and it did have aircraft, though it didn't see a whole lot of service. They did it because halfway through conquering the entire Pacific Ocean, 2 pesky task force got in the way, and put, well, more than just a big old wrench in their plans. However, we don't have that conversion in game yet. What we do have is what was prior, actually I think right after completion in 1918, a very well armed and armored super dreadnought. The main guns, unlike the other dreadnoughts in game, consist of 12 14-inch guns, opposed to their commonly around 10 12-inch guns. It also has 20 140mm secondaries, 10 on each side, and an impressive anti-air armament of 6 Lewis guns. The main belt is 305mm thick, while each turret is also 305mm thick, with the belt below the water being 102mm thick. It also has an armored deck of 152mm, meaning in the end, this thing is not easy to kill. Oftentimes when I'm playing it, I turn my brain off, sail to the middle of the map, and shoot everything. Many times when turning your brain off in naval, doesn't work out well because you can't hit anything, but in this thing, no one can kill you. They just keep shooting and nothing happens, and you're flinging shells in every direction because why not? Light cruisers run and hide because the secondaries are greater than your main cannons oftentimes, and God forbid the 14-inchers ever lay eyes on you. Why is this thing only 6.0? Because if it's 6.3 or any higher, jets would be all over the place. So if the Yamato ever gets into game, it's most likely going to be bombed by AGMs. We need to establish some sort of battle rating system that changes for each game mode you're in, so we don't have situations in which obviously a much more powerful jet is going against something that died to World War II props. But that too is a subject for another video. With this edition, I'm very curious to see where naval goes. Obviously, it needs some sort of decompression. For other Japanese related news, in data mines there was found the entire alphabet of katakana, excluding the modified characters, as decals. I'm pretty sure these are unfortunately only for DMM, but it's pretty cool. Now you can spell some things out on your tank. Sure, only people who read Japanese would know what the hell you're saying, and honestly it's actually probably best that it is only for DMM, and it was probably going to be a terrible decision in the end. What wasn't a terrible decision in the end was adding the ZTZ-99. Now on the Lifesaver is 10.7 and has received a new shell with 568mm of penetration at 10 meters. Took me a little bit to get used to it, but I have found myself doing quite well in the vehicle. However, I commonly need to take a backup as China has no other 10.7s. But the armor of the tank is pretty good and can absorb even the highest penetrating rounds in game. It can get pretty fast, it has good speeds, though absolutely terrible reverse speed, about 4 kilometers. I question if this is just a mistake on Geiger's end. I remember when the Type 61 was added to the game, it also had a 4 kilometer reversal speed, which was Gaijin messing up some documents. So I sort of hope there's a similar issue because, man, that 4 reverse speed is such a pain. But other than that, it has some very nice thermals as it is a rather modern tank. And like other Soviet-style tanks, no side armor, so be sure to keep your front forward. Overall, though, it seems to be a good sign as now you can find quite a lot of people grinding out the Chinese street because they want to take out the actually competitive tank. Also, a good number of them are Chinese, and like the Freeaboos and the Teaboos and the Weeaboos very much enjoy Chinese things. What kind of boo would be called China lovers? Like Teaboos are for the British. For the Italians, they finally got a helicopter tree, as you obviously know, and I have to say, actually, the starter helicopter, while I did criticize it a lot in the last video, actually has done quite well. The snibs are pretty accurate, so you can do some damage with them if you know how to aim the helicopter right, and the MGs do have the ability to kill open top vehicles, so you can get to a spawn location fast, and perhaps you can't spam rockets, but if you take aim a little bit and MG some ATGM tanks, you can do quite a lot of damage. Unfortunately, not enough to win the game though. I have, of course, not taken out the other helicopters, and I don't really plan to. Once you start getting ATGMs involved, I kind of lose interest in helicopters. I also don't have Italian tanks that high. My max is currently 8.0, so this new one is actually fantastic for me. And finally, for Sweden, their SAM is actually in the tech tree. I don't have it, and I never seen it before, so I don't really know anything about it besides 2 things. There was some complaints that it's actually not real. The version we got in game, apparently all creations of it were actually with like dummies. It was a proposed idea and never actually put together. That's just something I heard. Don't take it with too much of a grain of salt. The other one is that the radar spins in the hangar when you view it. I know, that's very important. Thank you very much for telling me. You're welcome. More importantly, the SAB 105s, both of them, the tech tree and the premium, of course, not only lost their AIM-9Js, as I said in my last video, but are now 8.3. However, I have still heard some great things about their performance, but hands-on experience is quite limited, unfortunately. I'll get one in no time. Last few final notes, there's a winter sale going on and an event to go along with it, in which you can get decals for your ships. Interesting. But before I close out, first I'd like to thank very much my YouTube members, my patrons, and of course my Twitch subs. You guys are helping out a whole lot, especially in the holiday season. So thank you a lot, guys. I really mean it. Now, if you have any comments and concerns, you can up down below or on my Discord. If you've enjoyed the video, be sure to hit the like button. If you didn't like the video, don't hit the like button. If you want to see more, hit the subscribe button. I make War Thunder weekly news videos every Friday. I make brand reviews throughout the week, and I like to stream on Saturdays, so be sure to hit the bell icon to be notified anytime I upload anything. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you have a fantastic day. In the terms of bonus news, I forgot to include this in the part for China. A Abrams for the Chinese tech tree has been turned down because Taiwan does not yet have the Abrams. Taiwan, you gotta hurry up. We want the Abrams in game.